The Missing Link, the DLC that came out after the main game was produced. A lot of fans thought that we'd actually cut this story from the game and then just delivered it as DLC later. But the truth was we absolutely did not do that. We had written the entire game story and finished it. We were in production just closing up the beta when suddenly we realized we had to release downloadable content afterwards and that it had to be story-based. It was a real challenge for us because we had to figure out how could we tell a story that took place after Jensen had been augmented and yet before the end of the game, because we didn't want to make it a sequel to the main game. So we actually had a very difficult time trying to figure it out, and we settled on the part that was when he gets into the boat and heads to an unknown destination. And we kind of figured at that point we could actually add a new storyline here. And the other challenge we had to make is we had to make Jensen be vulnerable at the start of this. So that kind of gave us the whole scenario for the kidnapping or the escape from and his being a prisoner.
It's useless to resist. This chair has a built-in EMP field generator. Your augs are nothing but dead metal right now.
Is that so?
No doubt they will have reset to Factory Zero. You need a limb clinic.
You can't have it both ways, you know. You can't play the good cop when you've been playing the bad cop.
You think you're clever, don't you? But this ship is heading to a bell tower naval base. A military facility for the confinement and interrogation of unprivileged belligerents. And when we get there, we're going to take you apart.
You can always try.
Trust me, Burke will. He's very good at what he does. Still, when they found you in that cargo container, you did manage to take out a number of highly trained men. Tell me something, Hotshot. Do you enjoy taking people's lives?
Doesn't keep me awake at night when I do. How about you, sweetie?
I'm not the one planting bombs and blowing up dockyards, darling.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Like hell you don't. We may not know who you are, yet, but Burke's running your profile as we speak. High-grade combat spec augmentations, built to be somewhat unnoticeable so you blend in with the civs. Someone spent an awful lot of money creating you.
Lucky me.
So I guess the real question is, are you a terrorist? Or some kind of corporate thief?
Would you be happier if I told you that I'm neither?
You have absolutely no idea of the shit you're in, do you? Rifleman Bank Station is a black site. It's off the grid. No one will come and rescue you. No one even knows where it is. You'll be dropped into a deep, dark hole and never see the light of day again. Stew on that for a while, tough guy. Commander Burke and I are returning to the base. Keep a close eye on him. You've secured his gear?
Yes, sir. Locked in one of the rooms upstairs, sir.
Good. And you have your orders.
Pritchard. Are you there? Pritchard? Damn it.
So we're joined right now by some special guests. These three gentlemen were very instrumental in helping to create the Missing Link.
Hi, I'm Hubert Corriveau. I was the environment director on the DLC, which was mainly coordinating environment, the production of environment.
My name is Frank McCann. I was the senior level designer working on the whole cargo, so the ship was mine at some point.
And Antoine Teasdale. I was a game designer on the Missing Link.
And one of the first challenges we faced when we did the Missing Link was having to basically create that chair and find a reason that we could take away Jensen's augmentations, right?
Yeah, removing the augmentations to weaken the character of Jensen, introduce as well the main bad guy, Burke, was such a challenge. At the beginning, we wanted to have Jensen's like almost held on the ceiling through chains, and then once he gets free from his constraints, we're actually falling on the ceiling, very weakened, all
To
bloody
really
and stuff.
stress that vulnerability.
Oh my god! But just technically trying to do that was very difficult. So we said, you know what? Just reusing Jensen sitting in a chair was much more easier, and then we went from a very conceptual type of design for the
To
chair.
basically the most overwrought assets in the DLC. We spent around 10 days just doing the chair to try and convey that it's an impressive chair that could disable Jensen.
And could shut down all his augmentations.
And augmentation, that's right. That was actually an early decision in the design to strip the player from all augmentations and equipment. We sort of wanted to make a bit of a statement that the game is not just action, it's also stealth. And get...
He's on the run! I've lost sight of him. He's right under our noses. I want a complete sweep.
Not here.
Shit! It hit me. Stay on alert. I want him. I've got something. Acknowledge. Reload! Keep up! Get over there and check out that noise. Lost contact. You can't have gone far. Search the area. Moving to the next search grid. This area is clean. Stay sharp. Continuing search pattern. Got it. Acknowledged. Ah! Don't make me! Where is he? Hold it! Right here. I know you're here.
Hey, so here, you see that shadow, which is very obvious if you look at the ladder here. It was one of the first time in the game that we did this kind of staging where the following event, even though left at your hands, would be rather obvious to do.
Yeah, and the thing is, I suggested to Dominic Demers, who was the lead lighter on the game and also the DLC, to help me on staging a few elements, but also to keep the player on the tension of the environment and the whole cargo. At least this first weekend, trying to use his actual natural skills to find his way towards his gear and the next objective to communicate to the outside world, to picture it and all. So here's is one of the good example, trying to use the lighting and the staging on the character, ready to be taken down, but everything was
and it was
placed
like
correctly.
one of the only times we really did that in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
entire Human Revolution
Exactly,
game.
because the cargo was so small, we could actually pushed up a bit more about the visual details, that type of details that we couldn't do in the City Hub that I also designed. So pretty cool stuff.
So you may have just heard a voiceover over the PA, someone doing something. That was supposed to be a very subtle hint that Jensen has a secret helper on board, doesn't he?
We were supposed to have so many elements playing in favor of player, but without actually telling too much that someone was trying to help Jensen. We had monitors that were monitoring the ship status, because the ship was automated at some in the design, and the monitors would just change their visual to indicate that the player, you can go now, and all this based on the timing of the patrolling guards in the immediate surrounding for the player. And we also had the camera shutting down just at the right moment, the lasers being shut down right at the proper moment, but all this trying to support as well the multi-path, multi-options of a typical Deus Ex game. Was like, actually it felt more like there were bugs or badly communicated stuff happening to the player, didn't understand. So I strongly suggested to just rip them out. At least we kept the PA announcement with the overheard guys who were just being changed to a new patrol. But that worked well, but the rest, we just scrapped it.
Adjusting main ballast tanks. Dropping draft 2 meters.
No, he's around here.
Keep searching. He's here somewhere.
Affirmative. Looks okay over here.
Nothing down here. Ready! I heard him. Checking it out.
Staying back.
I heard him. Checking it out. That's far enough.
Keep looking. Affirmative.
Got a man down here.
Yeah, from the playtest, those alternate paths inside the corridor itself came out very strongly, very good, and I'm pretty proud of those because I try to add alternatives to just walking down the corridor based on the timing of the patrol, or adding the infamous air vent, which I didn't want to do, even though we do have some air vents in the cargo, as it is obvious. But those work very well, so I'm pretty proud of trying to put the player in, trying to figure out using his observation and still using the ability of looking at the patrol, still in the same environment, like in
Staying back!
That's far enough.
I heard him over
That's
there!
far enough. Nothing here.
Got away. Watch it.
Need a back.
Clear landing pad for liftoff. Rifleman bank station control confirmed.
I know he's around here. Got you! Attacking! Staying back! He's got to be around here somewhere.
So one of the things that was kind of important for us is we had this whole discussion at the beginning because you start out in a boat, and since this wasn't a part of a Human Revolution, it was supposed to be a downloadable content, we wanted to kind of start the player off not necessarily knowing they were in a boat, but giving these subtle details.
Yeah, we were trying to convey that we didn't tell you outright, at least at first we didn't want to tell you outright you were in a boat, but we had to convey the impression that, okay, you're in a boat, so it moves and it sways from left to right, you have everything rocking, and the thing is, we had very little tech development for the DLC because it was an expansion.
hear that? Were you asleep or something? What are you doing here? Let's check it out.
Come get me! Got you! Ah! On the ground! Pay for this! Kill you! Give up now!
Yeah, from the playtest, those alternate paths inside the corridor itself came out very strongly, very good, and I'm pretty proud of those because I try to add alternatives to just walking down the corridor based on the timing of the patrol, or adding the infamous air vent, which I didn't want to do, even though we do have some air vents in the cargo, as it is obvious, but those work very well. So I'm pretty proud of trying to put the player in, trying to figure out using his observation and still using the ability of looking at the patrol, still in the same environment, like inside the corridor itself, but still slightly off and being safe, but you're not fully safe, so you have to time yourself between those openings, and it worked really well. I'm pretty glad of those.
Clear landing pad for liftoff. Rifleman Bank Station control confirmed. Holding for dock confirmation.
So the secret stash was an interesting thing because we wanted to make sure that the players' choices early on in the game would determine what kind of equipment they got here.
Yeah, exactly. And through the initial conversation we had with Netanya. I mean, Netanya, Nadia, I always confuse it. Anyway, so yeah, during the conversation I suggested that we have some kind of a branching moment inside the conversation. Not necessarily just role playing for the player, which from time to time we wanted to support in some moment. Not always just a debate conversation, but having those little moments that behind the scenes, the player, without knowing, we're actually doing some checks, and depending on how you answer to Netanya, you actually have a different gear that we give you. So I basically have 4 scenarios that I triggered based on how you portray the conversation, how you did the conversation itself, and I just swapped the proper scenarios with the proper gear inside.
And we were always curious because we didn't want to make it super obvious that you're picking stealthy and not stealthy when we were writing the dialogues, but we had to. And then the whole setup of the stuff, because we had to get across the idea that it had been left behind by the secret helper.
More important.
Pritchard, is that you?
I'm unlocking the door to the...
You're breaking up.
Fine, I see.
Importantly, what we created is people kind of realize, yeah, but Jensen is all bloodied up, and once he gets his suit, he's all clean. And we basically did if you notice, after you take the stash, you'll notice a bunch of little medical pads, bloodied and stuff, as though Jensen had washed himself with, he cleaned himself with the medicament, the medical supplies that someone provided him there. And it was the first time basically that we had a swap of character during the gameplay, so that was one of the rare technical development that was done for the DLC.
Initiation of state Life support needed. Stasis pod O2 saturation levels decreasing. Service oxygen delivery system.
So right now, we're looking at our lovely little secondary objective where we have someone is locked inside the life pod and their life support, because of the accident with the containers, has all their life support is slowly failing. And we kind of wanted to encourage the player to basically try and save this person so we could have a later payoff for your good deeds, and also to form the rest of the story. This was a lot of fun to try and draw players' attention to.
Well,
and help them understand what was going on.
Well, we went back to it one or two times during the project where we had new stuff like there's red lighting in the broken pod, there are sparkles, everything is disorganized. We tried to attract the player there, and for some reason this particular area came out in the playtest where we needed to make sure the player noticed that, so yeah.
And every single one of those life pods that are in this area that has somebody who's been kidnapped or arrested in there has a lovely little e-reader on it. And how many did you have us write for you there, Frank?
I think like 72. Mark was the writer who helped me on the cargo. I actually came to him and I said, you know, I need all those info books. I need them to be specific by those characters because I want to have more background. And he actually, after he stopped crying, he actually did it, and it's pretty cool. So we had some fun with it.
We thought, on the writing team, we thought it was a great idea until we knew that there were 72 of them. And but Mark was super creative. If you go through and read them, you'll find all sorts of little hidden jokes. In fact, you'll actually discover that some of the people from Gilligan's Island are locked in some of those pods.
Yeah, exactly.
But the whole point was ultimately to let you know that this person was hurt. And if you saved this person, we had trouble trying to figure out what the reward would be back in once you got farther on in through the game. And we ended up, basically the reward that we end up giving you is through a dialogue.
Yeah, with Quinn.
With Quinn,
well,
who is a merchant.
The most challenging part was not to tell the player who's helping the player. That sort of, you know, it was supposed to be a secret at that point. And then the reward needed to be something kind of casual, kind of, it's a good deed, so you're supposed to feel good about it, but, you know, I'm not going to help you too much. So if you do save the person in the pod, then Quinn, which you meet later in the missing link, turns out to be helping you and gives you like a bit of a discount at his little, like on the side store sort of thing.
So everything has a payoff somehow in this game.
Everything has a purpose.
Choice and consequences.
Cue Deus Ex music.
Yeah, over here we have the first cargo room, the first big environment that I wanted the player actually to play around with the environment, how to you can actually see the exit of that room towards the bridge, towards your actual next objective, trying to contact the preacher and help, actually get help. But the thing is, because you came from a very tight corridor-ish, a very narrow type of environment, very heavy intentions, I want to change the pace a bit. So I focus more about the environmental puzzle. And the thing is, since we just did the whole production of Deus Ex HR, Human Revolution, we were pretty good with our tools and the editor itself, and we were able to actually do more complex type of interactive objects.
Like that one here, you're standing on a container that can move in different area. It's to a player it looks like a simple object. You just press a button and it moves, but it requires certain scripting, and this is one object that we could do only because we mastered our tools after the development of DX Human Revolution. So we were able of doing those more complicated objects. Well, to us they are more complicated, and at little fees actually. So that's one of the added perks of doing a DLC, mastering your tools.
And the thing is, because the container is very in our face, we wanted to play around with it. It's very Deus Ex. You can actually explore the environment or find open container. And find your own way towards the exit, not necessarily needing to use the container itself. So trying to use the augmentations, jumping and whatnot. So that's pretty cool.
Container breach detected.
So right now, if you go into the corner of just in front of you, you'll notice an open container sprayed with bullets, which was a request from the story team to start off the big legend of Jensen who got captured.
Yes. Well, we
boogeyman.
figured that the way this was segueing from the Human Revolution, Jensen had gotten inside a life pod, and the next thing you know, when you're playing the missing link, he's beat up, he's been captured, but you never got to see that capture. So we really wanted to have a place in the boat where you actually could find where he had been. He had been captured, discovered, and so show that he was not taken down easily.
Yeah, so we kind of crooked the containers and spent a bit of time making blood and bullet impact in there. We spent like 2 days on that thing, just modifying that setup a bit so that it looks, for some reason the guards cleaned the bodies there, but they left some sniper rifle or something like that in there. I think it's a combat rifle that lies. There's weapons that are lying around for you to take.
And if you pay attention to the overheads, you'll notice that Jensen's acts of bravery got bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of the number of people that he took out in order to do this, as normally happens with rumors that are going around.
You know, it got to be so cool in production that we decided to make an achievement out of it. So it's more like it's not an Easter egg like you said, but it's sort of a nice little reward for the player who, you know, sticks with it. It's a really interesting story.
Pod failure imminent. Manual re-initiation. Container breach detected. Stasis pod failure.
Okay, so you're out of the boat right now and you see this storm in front of your eyes, and this is where we display fully the full extent of the new shader development we did for the DLC. This was all content driven without programmers. It's what we could do with our tools. So there's new it's not a new engine per se like people tend to say, it's just new shaders that we used. You have better lighting, you have better shading everywhere, the lighting, you have better contrast, you have the full frame glow, which kind of gives this extra edge of lighting everywhere. And actually full frame glow is probably the cheapest thing we added and the most rewarding technology we added as far as ramping up the graphics in there. So, and you see how we cheated the storm. Basically, you can feel here that the boat is moving. It's actually just the sky around you moving. You have this enormous mesh with water. All the vertex of the water are kind of moving back and forth. Particles are being emitted. All of this mesh, all the water around you, all the ocean and the sky, this is swaying left and right. The boat is actually entirely stationary. It just gives the illusion that the boat is moving because everything else around it moves.
And the sound really helps to sell that as well. All that storm noise and etc.
Yeah, so this is all that's set up here. Even the rain. You have this rain in front of you, which for most of the development we didn't want to put in there. We weren't sure we were able to pull it off in time, but the FX guy made a jump for it toward the end, and it was really great once it was in. Yeah, so you see this fisherman kit somewhere on the deck of the boat. That's one of the Easter eggs that Tama, one artist who did the infamous Destruction Man shells Easter egg in Angsha. He does those kind of joke once in a while, and this is kind of out of context, as though there were a fisherman during a storm just fishing there. There's no reason for it. It's just the guy found that funny. And we left that here.
And we supported it, I think, with the pocket secretary.
Yeah, there's some mail somewhere saying, "Hey, there's a guy leaving
clean
his
up the
fish
mess
stuff."
before Bert gets here.
Typical example of an artist having fun with the stuff, and we actually roll bond on it and try to include it in the story as well. But not every time, because in Detroit I had a huge hot dog somewhere in the back alleys, and we said, you know what, it's not really appropriate, so let's remove it.
So this one got to stay.
Those bastards? God, I hate them. You have to admit it, they're tough side. You afraid of hypnotizing or something?
So this white hallway, at the beginning this always was the same set of corridors than the other one you saw at the beginning of the cargo. But because we're out of the storm and we just got back in, the art director wanted to have a stark change of visual pacing. So this white corridors is very calm, which is a stark contrast to the storm that you have outside. It was something we did at the end of the DLC. We scrambled this set of assets for about 5 days, which was really fast actually. And I think it's a great call from the art director. That's the kind of thing that an art director is made for, just changing pace of the scene, and it makes sense in the context of the storm. So you have those surface table in front of us. If you walk to one of these tables, you'll see a bunch of assets propped up out of the table.
It's like a holographic table.
Kind of an holographic table. This is the most advanced shader we've done on those current generation hardware. You have all of this in front of you is some meshes, but mostly a shader that gives this 3D volumes. It's something we don't quite see on console, so we kind of went overhead with that. We was a party of shaders. The main thing about that is to try, and if you give attention to what's on the table, it's showing the boat getting ready to dock.
Yeah, because we're in an enclosed room, and we wanted to give the sense that, you know, we are approaching a base. You saw the base out on the deck, but we couldn't really show you any of that because we don't have any technology to show that you're moving forward and all this stuff.
Yeah,
so
the boat doesn't actually advance.
So we kind of put the surface tables on to give it a sense that, okay, now I see that we're supposedly docking at a base, and B, also to give us a sense of this is a military boat. And a lot of the designs in this room were kind of trying to show that this is more of a military-based boat.
X-ray 9er, North 7.
So this was a very crucial story moment for us, because this was the moment when we revealed that Jensen's getting help from someone. And we wanted to, from a story purpose, you want this to be a very pivotal, important moment. You want the player to focus on it. But we were limited in our cutscene budget for this, so we couldn't really do it as a cutscene and ensure that. We had to actually make it more of what we call a forced conversation.
Exactly,
and the conversation itself had to also react to what the player had done earlier, whether he'd played stealthy or not. So we had a lot of challenges in pulling this one off, from both a writing standpoint but also a technical standpoint.
It was a very complex conversation to do technically, because like we did with the first conversation with Netanya, where depending on how you role play in the conversation, we have different gear, and then from then how you play the first section, the trying to exit that environment and getting to the control room to call Pritchard for letting him know that you're held hostage somewhere, etc. And then, as you said, it is a reveal that the player also get help from a mysterious contact with that character on the screen, but also he's still isolated from the world because he cannot contact externally to his buddies. But yeah, technically the conversation also tracks the action of the player. Did you get seen by NPCs, by combatants and all? A very good Deus Ex type of mission scripting. So I'm pretty proud of this one. And
it was very reminiscent of the first Deus Ex, because we wanted this mysterious contact, like in the original Deus Ex, to help you get free as well.
Yeah, exactly. And also we had a lot of discussion trying to how do we show that character on the screen, and at some point we wanted to have a character hidden somewhere outside of the world in an empty space and actually have a camera on his face and see an actual character, but we couldn't technically do it properly, so we basically just did this animated texture with a fake robotic voice behind, so that it ended up pretty good, but yeah.
Securing bay doors. All personnel prepare for unloading. Aft and bow thrusters full back.
Someone's running. If anyone's here, come out now. What the hell? What's that?
Get ready. This is the spot. Keep looking.
Beginning final approach to Rifleman Bank Station.
What happened?
Docking bay confirmed. Aft and bow thrusters full back.
So one of the challenges, we wanted the cargo ship, we wanted to really make this be very Deus Ex and react to how you played earlier in the game. So you had a lot of fun setting up the setups for the enemies in here, didn't you?
Definitely. Playing around with the scenarios, having different type of setup of characters, of combatants waiting for you or not. It's basically tied up with your actions, your previous actions. Both the first part when you exit, you're holding cell, and all the way to the CIC, to the control room, including also the control room how you play it, etc. Both actually have how do you say this? The cumulative effect on how you see the scene, where it's basically either a scenario where everybody, all those guys, actually just very relaxed because they're about to dock the sea base, or they actually learn that there's someone trying to escape, etc. So they're basically waiting for you. We added mines, we added we had a lot of fun when that setup.
And it goes even further, because depending on how you play this, then that'll affect the opening of the base and the conversation you're going to have with Netanya.
A lot of ripple effect, exactly. Yeah.
Very Deus Ex.
Prepare for unloading.
All right, here we get some kind of a setup for Hazard. One of the things that we should have done better in the whole Deus Ex Human Revolution is trying to play around more about the gas effect, the electric type of challenges against some of the ammunition of the player, and it directly in the cargo I wanted to play around with it, at least with the gas. Of course, the player using the rebooter, I basically just close up this whole section with gas and trying to add also some elements of storytelling in the environment itself. Like one of the character was caught off guard by that leaking gas, and he tried to fix it. We got even emails hinting about it. So there's a lot of stuff that we play around to have a sense of context in just a gas hazard, and not do like typical games do, just here's a challenge, try to figure out how to pass it without sense of context. So we had some fun with it.
So what we call the SAS, that type of
security airlock system,
kind of in between door that you wait to load. When you see those type of things in games, typically it's because they're trying to load data on the other end of the door. This is what we're doing here. Basically, we made that compromise of no hard loading, so there's no hard loading in the DLC. You probably noticed that. But there's those SAS, and that's a compromise. When the SAS is animating and doing all of this fluffy stuff.
Sadly, Norway kept at the base on alert. I may be able to buy you some time, but...
So, you're a hacker.
There's the maintenance tunnel in loading bay 1. Access through a floor panel. Get inside. Follow the cables, and try not to kill the person inside.
It's actually loading the next room, depending on the direction you goes in, which was tons of little technical development we had to do to make it work properly.
And we needed them for a couple reasons. I mean, we needed them for the loading, but we also needed them for story purposes. They kind of often serve as gates, because we wanted to make sure that you achieve certain objectives. Like, for example, you have to go see Netanya before you can get access to the prison, and so they were kind of necessary for story purposes. I think this particular one that we're seeing first was very difficult because we also had to have the mysterious contact you in the midst of loading. which was a big challenge and a big debate as to whether we'd be able to pull that off or not.
I think it's actually interesting that we could merge story element into this type of typically technically required thing as this SAS is.
But they do take a long time, and because unfortunately there's a lot of backtracking that has to be done in this, they do get quite annoying after a while.
Yeah.
And for that, we're really, really, really sorry.
Sorry, guys.
I saw that! Jesus Christ! What's that? Establishing contact!
Civilian contractors must stay within designated areas.
However, we've also been apprised of some alarm activity on board. Nothing confirmed.
Huh? What's that?
Stop him! Bust him up! Try to hit me now!
So noticing the two guards that are just at the bottom of the ramp, one thing like we do very well in Deus Ex is the So noticing the two guards that are just at the bottom of the ramp, one thing like we do very well in Deus Ex is the environment reacts to past actions. In this case, if you had created chaos on the boat, these guards would be alerted and already expecting somebody to come out of this this environment right now. And if you didn't, well, obviously they're just talking and they're just like going on their patrol and everything. And that was a good lead on to the player getting out of an environment into another one, which is beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, we had only 13 weeks to do the DLC, which means that we had plenty of cuts to do from environment-wise. At first, we didn't want to do the exterior of the base that you're standing in right now, but basically the level artist just saw the mandate and just said, you know what, I can do this, and he basically added this upon himself to just do this exterior of the boat, exterior of the base, and that really creates quite a seamless switch from the boat to the base, which is much more interesting than what we had planned, which was crummy at best.
And it works really well too, because we also wanted to get that change of scale from inside the boat. You're inside those real tight corridors and locations, and then you get into this base and wow, suddenly it's big and open, and so the addition of that was a really, really nice plus for us. So one of the other challenges we faced in creating the DLC with our tight time frame is that we really couldn't create a lot of new AI or new enemies, and we really wanted to make a better and a different experience for players. So we had to get really creative, didn't we, as to how we got around that?
That's right. We looked into different archetypes and all sorts of new characters, and it was very very difficult for us to just get on with it and match with the story and the environment. So we decided that since it's a military base and it's supposed to be secret, it's off the grid, so it should be more defensive in nature than offensive, so no need for missile launchers and like satellite connection, nukes and stuff. So we wanted to make it more like it's easy for you to, if you find it, to get in, but then it's kind of hard to get out. So these Typhoon turrets that you see turning are based on a design that you also see at the very beginning of Human Revolution. That's used for on dummies in Serif Industries. So we decided that, since it makes sense that the Tyrants were there before and they stole some technologies, they probably took that technology and used it for, their own use, and that's defensive in nature. So you'll see them in different corridors if the alarms are triggered, just like one of those mechanics that we figured out would make something interesting. And I'll talk.
And there we go.
Security credentials must be carried at all times. You may be asked to produce said credentials by security personnel. Please comply.
Someone's running.
You'll pay for this! On the ground! Too late to hide!
That's far enough, Jensen.
You were behind this?
I said that's far enough. I can explain everything if you just stay where you are.
I'm not interested in explanations from you.
Then I suggest you get interested, and fast. Getting off the cargo ship was one thing. Getting off the base, when Burke is this close to unleashing his spec ops on you, is quite another.
Well, unless he's able to raise the dead, he's gonna need reinforcements.
Of course, I've only been assuming you want to get out of here alive. Perhaps reuniting with Dr. Reed isn't all that important to you.
What do you know about Megan?
I know the name set off way too many bells and whistles when I added it to Burke's profile search on you. But it helped me to figure out who you are and why you stowed away on the ship. You think Belltower kidnapped her, don't you?
You want to tell me you didn't?
I wish I could. But after what I've seen this past year, all I know for certain is she's not on the base. Not anymore.
What's that supposed to mean?
Not what you're thinking. Listen, Rifleman Bank Station supports all Belltower operations in this region, Jensen. Regular contract and special op. 6 months ago, I received orders to pull every regular grade soldier and civilian contractor away from the airstrip. 2 Black Hawk helicopters set down minutes later. I thought it had to do with Australia, especially when I saw covered stretchers coming out.
How many?
5. Guarded by a heavily augmented special ops team. Burke went out to meet the leader and the whole group disappeared inside the detention camp. There's some kind of black project going on in there, Jensen. Something involving prisoners and scientists. And I need you to find out what it is.
Why me, Keitner? That is your name, isn't it? The one Burke used back on the ship?
Natanya Keitner, yes. And it has to be you, because any movements I make are noted and logged. I can't risk blowing cover.
Cover? Who are you working for?
A few months ago, an Interpol agent approached me. They've had Bell Tower on their radar for some time, but they've never been able to prove anything. The things that agent pointed out about this base, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. So you see, Jensen, I really am playing the good cop and the bad cop.
Fine. What do you need me to do?
Hold still for a second.
What the...
Relax. I'm just compiling your biometric signature. Retinal scan, pulmonary and vascular imaging, the works. Once I upload it to the network and give Corporal Alan Tyler a security rating, you'll be able to pass through specific checkpoints in this sector.
Only this sector? Why not others?
Because I've seen how bloodthirsty you like to be. I can get you into the detention camp, but the interrogation wing is going to be a problem. Only Burke can give clearances for that.
And I assume you don't want me to go ask for one.
Still the comedian. There's a security mainframe inside the detention camp's central command tower. You'll need to upload this copy of your biometrics there by hand. Contact me using your infolink once you do. Any more questions?
The guards in the prison complex. Are they Burke's men or yours?
Definitely Burke's. Highly trained, special operatives. So if you start a firefight in there, don't expect to live long.
I'll keep that in mind. I'd like a little clarification here about you and Burke. I take it he outranks you.
Technically, yes. But this station is only part military stockade. And while he and his unit have 100% control over the detention camp, I have authority over the base.
So I don't need to worry that this is all just some creative attempt at mutiny.
Mutiny? You think I'd risk so much because... Listen close, Jensen. Burke is a sexist, chauvinist pig. And yes, he outranks me. He's also been in Bell Tower a lot longer than me, so he's got more connections, which he's used to undermine me at every turn. But that is not why you and I are standing here right now. People are getting hurt. Innocent people. And we have to find out why and expose it.
Exposure could destroy Bell Tower.
Bell Tower used to have honor. We do this right, it might again someday.
I could use some more hardware. Any chance Corporal Tyler will have access to the armory?
You're still a fugitive, Jensen. I suggest you keep a very low profile. Still, there is someone who might be able to supply you. One of the base mechanics, a civilian named Quinn. He runs a nice sideline in procurement.
I know the type. Why should I trust him?
Because I do, and because he has no love for Burke. He's in the lower level maintenance area near the elevator. He'll get you what you need.
That's all I need to know.
Good. I'll upload to the security network from here, so get going. Alan Tyler will exist by the time you reach the prison security port. Just be careful, and try not to draw too much attention.
Contractors must stay within designated areas. Entering restricted areas will result in termination and prosecution.
The security hub you have in front of you is another first for the DLC. It's not something very special, but it's a little trick that we sort of learned to do. If you look at the turrets, if you access the turrets, you can get a vision like a camera from it, but we faked it and by putting a security camera inside the turret model. So if you look at a turret outside, like in the corridor, you won't see it. but that was a way for us to actually tell the player where the turret is actually looking. So we sort of made the POV, the point of view from the turrets move at the same time as the camera. And that was the only way we could figure out how to make the security system in this room very challenging for the player and the constraints we had.
Be advised, new personnel should report to Security Central for biometric scan.
here, if you look at the environment, you're seeing it's a good example of our new way of modeling environment after HR. After HR, all the artists were kind of sick of doing it the old ways. It was kind of an annoying way to work. So we have this environment which has a lot more polygons in it instead of textures. And if you look at the floor, you see that everything is kind of modeled a bit. Instead of mapping individual mechanical lines, we're giving a lot more volumes to the environment. We can actually push off a lot of polygons in this engine, and we didn't use that enough in the original game. We really used polygons to the max in that game. It enabled us to work much faster and create more interesting environment. The volume is there. It's just more interesting, and mainly if you think it's ugly, I don't really care. No, I do care, but it's an interesting way of working.
It's not ugly.
And it's not really ugly.
I think it's beautiful.
Thanks. I have my own complex, and yeah.
Are you Quinn?
Well, if it ain't the bloody Grim Reaper himself.
What are you talking
So
about?
earlier I talked about how complex the dialogues were to write for The Missing Link because they had to react to a lot of variables. The conversation with Quinn is by far the most complex of all the conversations we had to write, because there were many things going on. Because we gave the player access to the base, because we allowed you to play the objectives in the order you want, first we had to realize that if you did not talk to Netanya, he couldn't be here. So we had to put up like a gone fishing sign, which was also a hint that he was actually on the boat waiting with you earlier. But then we also had to, basically for his dialogue, include all of these possible reactions to how you treated people in the base, whether you killed a lot of people in the base or not. We had to actually add to it a side quest, because this Quinn gives you this optional side quest, so we had to have all these strings of dialogues that react to whether you found the pieces, whether you accept the dialogue. We also had to make allowances for if the player gets the social aug, then you can use the social aug against Quinn to, I forget exactly what the point was for that, but like maybe you get cheaper prices or something like that. And we also had for Quinn the fact that if you did the optional secondary objective inside the cargo boat, he would have to react to that. And we also, because again, we had all the ways that you could complete this, you could actually see Netanya, go into the base, do a lot of the missions for her without ever seeing Quinn. And so we had to kind of take into account for that, and we had to take into account whether you get an objective later on with this eye and come back. So this was one of those conversations that really had to be fully graphed out long before we even started writing it, and then add to that the character of Quinn himself and the flavor. So this one was a lot of fun and a lot of challenge to write, and to act it out as well.
About this special offer.
Need some water at this point.
I don't know if you've noticed yet, but this base is packing some serious heat, especially in the form of those walking brick shithouse boxcars. If you get me a few odds and ends, I might be able to whip up a little something to make getting around easier, if you catch my meaning.
What kind of something are we talking about here?
Nothing fancy, just a 329 series MPRS.
A rocket launcher?
That's right, mate, and custom built, by yours truly, of course. You see, while I might be able to get my fingers on some low-level arms, I'm a little restricted when it comes to military-grade bells and whistles, and I'm itching to try out a new trigger propulsion mix. Maybe even recalibrate the guidance system for some extra punch.
I like the sound of this.
Fucking right, you like the sound of this. It's the bollocks. Look, all you gotta do is find me some components. I'll do the rest. An earlier boat had a shipment of 329s, but I wasn't able to poach any of them before they made it to the armory. Luckily, little Sparrow in my employ managed to lose one through maintenance circulation, but he got himself shit canned before I could collect. Now my little bute's lying around the base somewhere in bloody pieces. The launcher, I mean, not the wee man. Though, no idea really happened to him.
Right, so long story short, you need me to find the parts and bring them back to you.
Yeah, that about sums it up, I'd say. Just find me the trigger module, scope assembly, and launch a barrel, and we're in business. I could scrape up the rest from leftovers here in the shop.
I think I already found one.
Hey, let me see what you got there. That's the 329's trigger module. Let me know when you find the other two. What are you buying? Thanks for shopping at Quinn Mart.
So you'll notice as you go through the base that every single room has a purpose, and it's been outfitted with a lot of the visual storytelling. This was a lot of forethought had to be put into this, and one of the things we did in the process of the game, of creating the DLC, was we would write an environmental storytelling doc. Basically, we kind of decided, okay, what is the purpose of the base? What are the purposes of every single room? And we described a lot of the things that we felt would be appropriate in a military base like this. And then we handed that off to the art team and said, here you go, have fun with it.
And then the environment guys, after a bout of crying, where they have all these little extra tidbits to do in every single room, well, we do manage that and just try to do stuff as cheap as possible so that we can convey, oh, you have this operation map here and there's stuff, and if you read the post-its, sometimes they make sense and they relate to the story. And you have some offices where you have pictures of people, and there's actually a backstory written for them, and it's really for the explorer.
And the show don't tell of the environment.
The type of player that wants to revel in those details, they're going to have their money's worth with Deus Ex, typically.
So right in front of you are the entrance to the detention center, and if you open those doors, you're about to come into another space. We had to create, at this point in the game, a choke point. We wanted to open up the gameplay from the linear aspect of the cargo ship, and yet we needed to ensure that you didn't get inside the prison before you meet Netanya. So this created a lot of story issues for us, especially since when we were working on this story, we thought you wouldn't even be able to get into the base before you saw Netanya. But in actuality, you could get through the base, you could get all in through this area that you've been exploring and get all the way to this door and not have seen Netanya. So a lot of the decisions that get made when we're creating the game and creating the levels is how can we create these choke points and how can we make them make sense with the story. And in this instance, we were able to make the saves make sense because obviously Netanya has to give you some kind of a key or program your DNA into the safe so that you can get into there, but you won't be able to do that until you've seen her. But some of these things were a lot of the difficulties we had in trying to maintain the freedom and flexibility of a Deus Ex experience and yet still keep a tightly controlled story. So now you've made it inside the secret detention camp of the DLC of The Missing Link. And this was level designed by Stephen Chichola.
Yes, thank you, Mary, and for saying that correctly. I was the level designer of the prison, and it was a lot of fun to do. One of the things that was really interesting with this level was that I had a lot of limitations in just the way it looked, and we had to redesign it completely from the ground up at least 3 or 4 times. At the start, it used to be sort of this long angular prison cell with just cells all along the wall. Very old-fashioned style looking references that were used for this. Eventually this got changed into a more open-ended, similar, but just had prisons on both sides of the walls with a larger space in the opening in the middle, and that got changed again. And then finally we've reached this conclusion to have this sort of tube, this turbine almost, that I would call it a silo is what we actually called it, of all these prison cells.
And the reason for that was because we needed to create the sense of a very massive prison that extended on beyond the areas you would get to explore.
So when I got this request, it was kind of like, oh geez, how am I going to show this? Because we can't have the player going to 50 some odd floors, right? It would be a little ridiculous. So in the end, what I had figured out would be kind of a clever idea was to have the entire floor in the center where this cube is rested upon is actually a mechanical floor that lifts and lowers depending on where the guards want to go inspect, I suppose. And
you can actually see this in the 4 tall pillars on the corner of that floor. There is this huge machine on them, which are basically kind of mechanical system that are the elevator system in there. We've designed that to make sense. And I guess that's the only thing that we have that really say this is motorized.
And another interesting tidbit was the entrance to this area, the positioning of the entrance to this large silo was something that changed also very often.
It was important to us because as soon as you get there, it's a very nice beauty shot of the prison. And the redesign of the thing, one of the big aspects of redesigning it, we had a much better Deus Ex style environment with this kind of sci-fi environment here, which I think it's really cool. I'd like a movie in that prison, actually.
It's a nice reveal.
Yeah, and I had to place all the NPCs as well in every single prison cell to...
Keitner, Jensen, I'm in your detention camp and uploading to the security mainframe now.
Copy that. Any problems?
Nothing I couldn't get rid of.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later. Right now, you need to get inside the interrogation wing and find out what Burke is hiding. Contact me when you know. Keitner out.
Again, same problems that I've had in the Alice Garden pods earlier in HR is that you're trying to make a very populated area, but you have limitations on how many NPCs you can use. And so I kind of managed to place NPCs in each pod that every so often, each doing different things, and you can kind of talk to them. And so that was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy this area.
Keitner, Jensen, I'm in your detention camp and uploading to the security mainframe now.
Copy that. Any problems?
Nothing I couldn't get rid of.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later. Right now, you need to get inside the interrogation wing and find out what Burke is hiding. Contact me when you know. Keitner out.
Please, call the embassy. They will vouch for me. Please, don't send me to the captors. This is a travesty of justice!
Activating security scan. Biometric data assembled. Subject recognized. Access granted.
So, the restricted area. Here, we had to design the environment in a way that made it obvious that you were not supposed to be there. Something bad is happening here. We had a bit of trying to figure out what looks this could have to look ominous. And at some point, when the environment was mostly done, we looked at it in a conference room in a review meeting, and we just all realized at the same time, oh my gosh, this looks like Star Wars. And it kept that way in the end, but we really felt that, wow, we're so gonna be sued.
But it wasn't intentional.
It wasn't intentional, it just, we got there, and yeah.
So now we're joined once again with a voice you've heard several times in this director's cut, Steve Shepkowski, our audio guy. And
yeah, so we're here to talk about the new device that we introduced in the DLC, which was basically the audio logs, which I was really happy about. I thought it's a great way to add backstory at a very low cost, because it's just an object that we put in a room, and then you just plug in all the story stuff that you want the player to get. So for me, it's always a great, cheap way to introduce lots of backstory, and it was fun doing it because you get to put it together and you make your little ambiances and make it sound like you really try and sell it like it's a story. We had an operation scene in this, which was really fun to do, and I'm a big fan of audio logs. I think they're a lot of fun to do, and for sure on a production level, you get a lot of payout for the cost of putting one little object in the game. So yeah, it was great. I was happy we did it.
Post-interview log. Patient has been returned to detention area after sedation. The medical history gathered indicates that she's a prime candidate for inclusion. Similarly, all biological indicators fall within required parameters. Recommend preparation for stage 1 therapy prior to...
Gary, have you seen this? Have you seen what's on this smart disk? He's gone mad!
Tiffany, slow down. What are you talking about? Where'd you get that?
I found it in the last shipment of materials we received. One of the boxes had been tampered with, blatantly. Someone was sending this to me, to us, to warn us about Commander Burke.
That sounds a little far-fetched, don't you think? I know the two of you have butted heads, but Bob's assured me that the Commander is with us on this.
Really? So Mr. Page is okay with us using unwilling human test subjects, is he? What's his opinion on Bell Tower using the OCM to further their military aspirations? Ask him about this Hydra project.
Tiffany, calm down. I know all about the Hydra project. It's nothing nefarious. It's simply a means of allowing soldiers to communicate more efficiently when in the field. You've seen Burke's augmentation. It has nothing to do with the OCM.
So, you think his obsession with this technology is because he's an environmentalist? Gary, I know this bothers you too. Those poor women. We can't keep doing this. We can't just rush blindly ahead and let men like Burke pull our strings. Science has made that mistake before.
I know. All right. Let's go down below and contact Bob. We'll see what he has to say about this. I know he's intrigued by the nanotech possibilities. Certainly, he's disappointed with the results we've had.
I'm sorry.
so right now you're looking at Nina, our poor prisoner. It was very important from a story standpoint that we could put some weight on saving these prisoners. You're going to have a very important choice, and it's a moral dilemma. And we really wanted to kind of stress that moral dilemma. So that kind of reasoning led to the creation of this character, Nina. We wanted to have a chance to have a conversation with the prisoners and to basically understand them as individuals. And that's why we have this one character who came in. We wanted actually to offer the possibility that you could rescue her individually because she was someone you have a face-to-face conversation with. But unfortunately, we knew we wouldn't be able to pull it off because we didn't want to have you, we didn't have any kind of mechanics for saving someone, for having them become a follower, etc., etc. So unfortunately, we had to leave her in this cell and leave you with that moral choice. And because we knew that, we basically decided that we needed to use her presence here to really make that choice stronger. And when the choice comes up, you'll see her again in some of the cameras that are focusing on the prisoners.
I want to help you, but you've got to stay calm. Now, what did you mean by disappear like the others? What's been going on back here?
I don't know. I've heard rumors and seen some things, and I know what they've done to me. biopsies, blood samples, tissue cores, like I'm some sort of lab rat.
Is that why you're back here? Separated from the others?
This is where they study and examine us to see if we're compatible or something. I don't know what they want from us. Sometimes we're sent back to the cells. Those that aren't, some of the others think they let them go, but I think they're being sent somewhere else. Another facility maybe. Somewhere else inside this one.
Why? What makes you think that?
Because of the way they talk when they're with us. It's like they're looking for some kind of perfect gene match or something. I'm not a doctor. I don't understand it. I just don't want them touching me anymore.
I know this is gonna seem cruel, but I can't help you right now.
You're going to leave me here? You can't. You have no idea what it's like. Please.
I can't have you tagging along just yet, or walking the halls alerting the guards. Trust me, when I can get you out, I will. But your best bet is to stay put.
I'll alert them anyway. Burke and the 2 doctors were just here heading for the morgue. I'll tell them you're here. I will. Let me out or I'll tell them, I swear.
And then what? Do you really think they'll let you go? I'm still the best chance you've got, but you have to be patient.
Please. Don't go.
Clinical trial log 11/27. Attending, Dr. Tiffany Kavanagh, Dr. Gary Savage. Observing Commander Peter Burke. Patient has been sedated and restrained.
Administering compound P-026, 1.75 cc's. Injection via the left suboccipital triangle, isolating the neocerebellum and pontine nuclei.
Well done, doctors. Appears that the spinocranial replacement was successful.
She's been stable for 48 hours. Placing the upper column and posterior skull is more complex than your own hindbrain augmentation, Commander Burke. But it's well within our abilities. That's not our sticking point.
I'm quite aware of what your sticking point is, Doctor. Getting results that I can use.
Gary? Gary, she's waking up. Look at the alpha waves. They're attenuating. Blood pressure and heart rate are rising. O2 saturation is really low.
Savage, get this under control.
Tiff, increase sedation and disconnect the OCM interface. Get a dose of propofol ready, see if she stabilizes.
It's not working, Gary. Damn it. There's a rupture in the circle of Willis. Anterior cerebral artery. Shit. I've got to get in there.
It's already too late, Tiffany. You know that.
Is it still alive?
No. No, we've lost her. I don't understand. She burned out so quickly. Arterial degeneration was clearly more advanced than anticipated, but still, the new compound should have worked.
Dispose of the body. I'll have the next viable candidate prepared and sent down to you, Dr. Kavanagh.
So we mentioned before that we had a very, very limited cutscene budget for the missing link. We only had 3 minutes that we could use for cutscenes. And this cutscene that you're watching right now was one that we knew right from the get-go. We absolutely had to have it as a cutscene because of several things that were happening. First of all, we're showing you Gary Savage, who's a Deus Ex character, so we can't let you kill him. We also don't want you to kill the villain, Burke, so we had to make sure that he was a part of this scene and that the player could not interrupt with it in any way, shape, or form. We also needed to show you at the end that you had to see a hidden panel and a secret wall that is going to be key for your next objective. But I think another main reason that we did it was simply because our dialogue system in the game was not made to support more than 2 players, or two characters at any one time, Jensen and another. So in this instance, we actually absolutely had to make this as a cutscene because of all the reasons, from a technical aspect, from the story point that we were trying to give across, from the fact that we know that players like to kill people, and we couldn't allow you to do that. So all of that kind of came into making this the most important cutscene for us.
Keitner, I found out what Burke's been concealing. The interrogation wing is some kind of medical testing facility. He's using the prisoners as lab rats.
For what?
Not sure. I'll need Burke's retinal scan data to find out.
I can't download that without setting off a million alarms. However, Burke's eyes are enhanced, Jensen. He uses special retinal prostheses custom-made for him by the Tai Young Medical Corporation.
You want me to remove Burke's eyes?
Not the ones he's currently using. He just received a new set this evening for when the cargo ship docked. With any luck, you'll find it in his office. Keitner out.
Activating security scan. Biometric data assembled. Subject recognized. Access granted.
Please, let me go! This is illegal! You can't keep us locked up!
Activating security scan. Biometric data assembled. Subject recognized. Access granted.
So, what's the story? Buy something or bugger off. Satisfaction guaranteed. Unless, of course, you fuck it up yourself.
Listen, we'd all like to be in the middle of the action in Oz, but we're stuck here. It's better than policing civilians like Jonesy. Isn't he stationed in China? Drag that must be.
I don't know. It just sounds like a fun time at least. Especially Lower City. There's a hotel there. Full service girls. You know what I mean?
Maybe you're right. Wouldn't have to deal with Burke and his asshats. I don't envy Commander Geithner. He has to deal with his crap daily.
Keep it down. Jesus. We saw him go to the detention block. Who's to say he hasn't plugged the hall outside his office or something?
You're being paranoid. Besides, what would he do? Geithner still runs this base, and she has our backs.
Here we are standing inside Netanya Keitner's office, our secret helper in the base. And one of the things that we do from a story standpoint is we really build these immense backstories for our characters. And then we can use, a lot of times that backstory never gets revealed directly in the game. And a lot of times people won't understand it, but we can use a lot of that for fuel for the art, for the creation. And Netanya's backstory was created by one of the narrative designers, Bruce Kelly, and he had created this whole story about her and her twin brother who died when she was 13. So,
Geithner, I've got the eye, but it's not going to fool a retinal scanner unless it's attached to an optic nerve.
I know that, Jensen. I do have a plan. Take the eye down to Quinn. He'll know what to do. Keitner out.
If you look very closely on the desk, you'll see some pictures that are supposed to be of her and her twin brother when they were young. And some of the, and I think, as a matter of fact, he even made the password on her computer was her brother's name, although at the moment I'm forgetting what that name was. Otherwise I would tell you, so you didn't have to hack it. So a lot of those kind of simple little details get put into the game and possibly never picked up on, but here's a few you can look at.
Hopefully.
So, what's the story? Just got off the horn with the commander. She says she got something for me to take a look at.
Prosthetic eye, one of Burke's. We needed to get past a retinal scan, but it's useless like this.
Aye. Without an active neural connection, it might as well be an expensive paperweight. May as well put a gobstopper in front of the scanner for all the good that thing will do you.
Solutions, Quinn. Think you can handle this?
Lad, I may be just a mechanic, but I'm also the only thing keeping this whole bleeding facility from sinking into the abyss. Think I can manage a simple optic frequency bypass. Just let me get me tools. Right. So that's it now. You got the eye. Sorry it took a little longer than I expected. Nearly break the damn thing once or twice. New TYM firmware and such. Now don't go fucking around with it. It's only got a limited lifespan due to the temp power source I rigged. It's only good for one use. Got it?
Well, hopefully this thing works.
It'll work just dandy so long as you don't do something stupid like drop it. And it ain't a bloody webcam. So don't try using it to spy the knickers up someone's skirt. What are you bu- No refunds. Well, if it ain't my favorite and currently only customer. Got those parts for me?
Yeah, take a look.
Aye. Let me see what you got there. Fucking deadly. That's all of them. Give me a sec with me tools, I'll get them sorted out right and proper. Right then. That'll do you. Anything else I can be helping you with then?
I gotta go.
Right. Do us both a favor. Keep your head down.
Activating security scan. Biometric data assembled. Subject recognized. Access granted.
Please, don't send me to the doctors! You can't do this! We have rights! Please, call the embassy. They were waiting for me. 叫我关在这儿，只给我一个理由。This is illegal. You can't keep us locked up.
Activating security scan. Biometric data assembled. Subject recognized. Access granted. Access granted.
This is an elevator, of course, that's going down, and it's one of the few times where we could actually make this very directed flow of whatever happened.
Jensen, it's Keitner. Where are you?
In a well-concealed elevator inside the prison's restricted wing. Your gun-running neural engineer deserves a raise.
I take it the eye worked then. Good. Now listen, if what you say is true, if Burke really is using the prisoners here as lab rats, I need proof. Hard evidence that I can take to Interpol.
An entire prison full of kidnapped civilians isn't enough?
You're an ex-cop, Jensen, you tell me. How many death row inmates crying on about their innocence have you seen getting out?
Point taken. I'll see what I can find.
Outside of the elevator. So when you go down, you see all of this animated stuff going on. There's that base, there's that submarine going on. It's
So here we are inside a very, very important story room. This entire room was basically created to help convey the real story we wanted. We had so much we wanted to express here that this is a top secret research base tied with VersaLife. If you look very carefully, you might find some clues about that here. And it was really to just kind of show off a lot of what we were unable to show off in HR in the Omega Ranch facility. So we wanted to really get across a lot of that idea of the experimentation that's going on here on human experimentation. We wanted to put in all the ties to the Chiron project. In the corner you can see parts of the boss that you're actually going to fight later. And one of the really, really cool things is what we call those surface tables, these holographic tables. And every single one of them, if you have the right device that will activate them, they kind of even in themselves tell even more story. I think one is talking about a secret moon base that's going on. One of them is showing the locations of all the Chiron projects that exist in our universe and all the Panchaea projects, because there's more than one. But all of that secret stuff that's hidden throughout this, all just to basically tell this depth of story if you just spend the time looking at it.
Artistically, this is by far the most expensive room we've made because of all of these details. We probably have there's an artist who worked exclusively on this room and the elevator ride just before for the entirety of the project, which means around 13 weeks to do all of this.
So the one issue for me in this lab was this was where we had to put our Kavanaugh, the Dr. Kavanaugh, Tiffany Kavanaugh, who's a very important character for the story. And when we were originally looking at it, I really kind of wanted her off, separated in her own room, because we needed to kind of have it make sense from a story perspective how you can come into this room and do whatever the heck you want and she doesn't pay any attention. So it was a bit of a challenge because we had such a small space that we could work with.
Yeah. One of the things that ended up happening was we ended up having art constraints a little bit, just on size. We couldn't make 2 huge story rooms. We could only really have one.
There were also those glasses. We were supposed to enclose it in glass, but it transparency costs a lot to the current generation graphic cards, and we couldn't. There was so much stuff going on in that room that we had to get rid of that glass. And yeah.
Yeah, and another problem was the generation of chaos from the player. We couldn't have him shooting a machine gun all over the place, and then you could maybe possibly kill Kavanaugh, which was also a really big no-no. So we ended up taking away the force holster on the weapon, so that's a little bit annoying.
And then we tried to sell the fact that she doesn't see you by having her positioned her back to you and have her absorbed in her work. I always kind of wanted her to have headphones on, like she's trying to listen to music or something. But we hopefully sold it a bit in terms of the custom animation that we created for her, so that when you actually go, she kind of jumps like she's really scared and was absorbed in her work.
Yeah,
so
I think it worked out.
And it's interesting how much focus you have to put on something like that just to try and sell it when you know the player can do anything they want.
Quite the house of horrors you got here, Doc. You letting anyone in, or just women?
Who are you? How'd you get down here? This is a restricted area.
Obviously. You wouldn't want the rank and file knowing what kind of sick experimentation is going on down here.
No, you don't understand. I'm not.
Where's Burke? And your research partner, Savage?
Burke went back up to the base. And Gary left. Told me to be smart, keep my mouth shut, and do whatever Burke tells me to do. For now.
For now? I heard the 3 of you talking up there in the morgue. Sounded like you don't exactly fit in here, Dr.
Kavanaugh. And who the fuck are you?
The name's Jensen. I came here looking for someone. Megan Reed.
Reed? I've seen her research. Gary thinks it could be the key we're missing. If she can be convinced to come here.
Megan Reed was kidnapped, Kavanaugh. Violently. As was her entire scientific team and the dozens of women you've been torturing down here.
No! You don't understand. I'm trying to save them. Gary and we were sent here to put the OCM project back on track. It wasn't until we got here that we realized what that meant, and by then it was too late.
OCM. Savage used that term in the morgue. What does it mean?
Organic computational matrix. It's a means of cross-connecting living brain tissue and artificial intelligence systems to create a supercomputer of unparalleled capability. Part flesh, part silicon.
That's what you're doing down here, turning prisoners into computer parts.
Human brain activity has to be integrated with the technology, or else it won't work. Even DARPA knew that.
What does DARPA have to do with this?
Nothing. Not directly. In 2007, they started looking for research partners to help develop an artificial cognitive science program that could increase a soldier's situational awareness in the field. A number of private sector companies submitted proposals.
Bell Tower being one of them.
No. Bell Tower was a private military corporation. DARPA wanted researchers. But one of the companies who did submit something was a biotech corporation that deals with Bell Tower. And they believed a successful program could be designed if it could be wired directly into the soldiers' brains. DARPA wasn't willing to go that far.
So this biotech company took the idea to Bell Tower.
A corporation that, being privately funded, doesn't have to concern itself with political or ethical debate.
You seem to think Megan's research is integral to salvaging this project of yours. Why?
It's not my project. Had I known before I came here...
Right, just answer the question.
We're experiencing cross-systemic failures with the tech. Over time, subjects implanted with OCM augmentations suffer complete neurological breakdown. They pretty much burn up from the inside. Gary thinks it's a problem with the acceptance of the P-dot array.
I've heard that phrase before.
It's the building block of modern neuro-augmentations. Dr. Reed's been reshaping it. changing the way it bonds with living tissue. The mutagenic gene combination she's introduced into it, well, frankly, it's astonishing.
Enough to warrant her kidnapping? So she'd be forced to work on this project with you?
She's not on this project. I don't know what she's doing or where she is. This is the first time anyone's ever mentioned kidnapping.
Just how many prisoners are being wired into this thing?
I don't know. But a lot of them don't seem to survive for more than a year. I've told the others there's no way this project can stay viable with these kinds of numbers. But the OCM computers have to have them to work.
Computers? You mean there's more than one of them?
There's several. This is just where the process starts. The factory floor. We select the candidates here, implant them, and ship them to the other locations. It's all very efficient.
Yeah, except your candidates keep dying. You're really gonna stand there and try to justify your role in this, aren't you? People are being enslaved, Kavanaugh. Enslaved and crucified.
It wasn't like that at first. I thought we were going to make a difference, do something incredible for the world.
Right. And look how incredible it turned out to be. But you can still make a difference, Doctor. You can help me blow the lid off this place.
Are you insane? I can't. There's too much money invested in this. Burke, the people I work for, they'll kill me. They'll hunt me down and kill me.
I know people who can protect you, hide you. Interpol is just waiting for evidence to tear Bell Tower apart.
It's not just Bell Tower. Oh, God. Oh, God, am I really going to do this? You can't get me out through the prison. Burke would stop us.
Then we'll have to do what Savage did. Take a submersible.
We can't. The hatches to all the docking hangars are locked tight. The only way to unlock them is by using the security console in the prison command tower. Burke keeps an eye on us that way.
Then I'll have to go back up there and unlock it. Well, you gather as much evidence as you can carry.
Oh my God, I'm really gonna do this.
Damn right you are. Now get moving. I'll contact you when I unlock the hatch.
All right, fine. But Mr. Jensen, please, hurry.
Keitner, contact Interpol. We need rendezvous coordinates for a deep-sea submersible.
A what? What exactly have you found, Jensen?
A research complex hidden beneath this base. One of its staff is willing to turn whistleblower if we can deliver her to Interpol using one of the lab's transport subs.
Which explains why you need the coordinates. I'll see what I can do. Keitner out.
Keitner, what the hell's going on? The elevator stopped.
Burke must have intercepted our comms. Get the hell out of there, Jensen. I'll meet you.
Source of disturbance. We know from here. Keep looking. Something suspicious. Stay on patrol.
Code Yellow initiated. Detention silo decontamination proceeding. Activating security scan. Biometric data assembled. Subject recognized. Access granted.
Keitner!
We really broke open a hornet's nest, didn't we, Jensen?
It's bad. You need a medic.
Yeah, I'll get right on that. Got those coordinates, Jensen. But Burke figured it out. Seized control of the station and locked down the detention camp. Bastard's cleaning house.
I've got to get Kavanaugh out.
Can't. Not until you stop the gas.
What gas?
Burke's enacted a scorched earth protocol to stop the truth from getting out. Poison gas in every cell. Lab 2. Unless you stop it.
Stay with me, Keitner.
There's a circuit board underneath the prison command tower. Directs the flow. Everything's connected, but might be able to redirect. Whistleblower has to live, Jensen. Only sure way we stop this.
Keitner? Keitner!
Detention silo is secure. Lockdown is complete and Keitner has been taken care of. Out.
Lost him! I'm gonna find you! Where is he?
Detention silo is secure. Lockdown is complete.
You can't keep hiding. Come on back!
Silo decontamination underway.
Shit! Lost him! Quick sweep, then I call it in.
You can't keep hiding. Sounds like trouble.
I'm gonna find you! Where the hell is he?
Silo decontamination underway.
Keep running.
Warning. This is a code yellow. Mass facility decontamination initiated. Silo decontamination underway.
Shit! Lost him! Hostile, on the run! I'm gonna find you!
This is a code yellow. Mass facility decontamination initiated. Silo decontamination underway.
What happened here? Someone hiding over there. Hearing source of disturbance. Confirm on target! Gotta reload.
This is a code yellow.
Detention silo is secure. Lockdown is...
Come up, you bastard! Where are you going? I know you're still here. Try me now. I can't hear you, asshole. Stop running. Get out here!
Ready for shifts?
Someone do something!
Shit.
This is a code. Mass facility decontamination initiated.
Someone do something! Stop it!
Silo decontamination
Who the hell is that?
Detention silo is secure. Lockdown is complete.
What the hell was that? Hearing source of disturbance. We know someone's here. Keep looking.
This is a code yellow. Mass facility decontamination initiated.
Why are you doing this? They're murdering us!
I've got you now. Lost him.
Silo decontamination underway.
Lost him. You running? You can't escape. Hostile on the run.
Mass facility.
I'm gonna find you. want that, you son of a bitch! I'm right here! See
Silo decontamination underway.
Quick sweep, then I call it in.
I know you're still here!
Silo decontamination underway. Warning. This is a code yellow. Mass facility decontamination initiated.
Look up. Something that gamers don't usually do when they enter an area is look directly upwards, and what I actually...
On budget. The toxicity level is dropping. He's found a way to save everyone, Bratan.
What? The hacker from the ship. You've been listening this whole time?
Like Zetka said, everything's connected. You'll still need to unlock the submersibles while Whistleblower can go free. Use the touchscreen in the command tower. It'll also let you back inside the base.
And why would I want to go there?
Use your head, Chuvak. The last thing standing between you and Megan Reed is Burke.
He tried to do with this little vent passageway with a goodie down low is to hide what I put above. I really, for the DLC, I really wanted to put a secret in a secret, is how I call it, and it's kind of the thing where you finally move the box, you find the vent, you're like, I found it, you go in, you get loot. Normally, in your gamer sense, you would just leave. You would backtrack out. I succeeded. Next objective. But in this case, I wanted to hide another secret on top of this, and this came from the entire.
Kavanaugh, I've unlocked the hatch and I'm transmitting the coordinates to a rendezvous site.
Oh, thank God. I thought when the code yellow started.
It's over. Just make sure Interpol gets that evidence. I'm going after Burke. Jensen out.
The entire thought process of being able to choose who to save.
But this is a very, very important room,
yes,
because this gives you access to a very hidden third option that you can save everybody in the game.
Yeah, that was my fault. I'm sorry. It's just Deus Ex is all about choices and consequence, and we from very early on it was the idea of you can save someone specific, very important to the story, or you could save the prisoners because it's mass murder at that point. You'll figure it out later when you play it. But as a Deus Ex thing, I really wanted to, on a game design perspective, on a gameplay perspective, it was important that we offer like a very, very unique choice for the player that really wants to work to succeed into something special. And that was to save everyone. Find a way. There's always a way to save everyone. So Steven sort of looked at me weird. I said, really?
But I love that stuff. I
We all
really
love
do.
that stuff.
And I thought that I didn't want to just give it away, you know? Something as important as that, I wanted it to be really something for the true searchers and explorers. So if you look up, go there when,
So you
when
made
the
it
time
super,
comes.
super hard to save everybody.
Exactly.
Activating security.
Right. With regards to the casting of Burke, it was pretty interesting because we had written the character and we knew going in like he was going to be the villain and he was military. So I guess just by default we kind of expected a somewhat over the top, you know, somewhat very, you know, barking commands and this sort of thing, very loud, strong, and probably 9 out of the 10 actors who came in did it.
Corporal Tyler? Or should I say Adam Jensen? That's right. I know who you are now. Geithner wasn't quite as good at hiding her tracks as she thought she was. You're clever, I'll give you that. Most men aren't capable of seeing beyond the choice in front of them. But whatever you think you've done, it's of no consequence. Helping that fool Kavanaugh escape, saving the lives of a few worthless civilians, it won't change anything. All you've done is make yourself a target. The Reed woman, this Megan you've been searching for, she's not here. And the only thing standing between you and the ship that could take you to her is me. I underestimated you back on the ship. I won't be doing it again.
Right. With regards to the casting of Burke, it was pretty interesting because we had written the character.
Lad, you there?
Quinn? Where are you?
Getting me arse out of Dodge. Burke's had enough, and he's gunning for you. And I don't intend on being caught in the bloody crossfire. But listen, that trick you pulled with the gas, fucking brilliant work that was. Head to me shop. I left you a thing or two so you can give him hell. I'd like to say we'd meet again over a pint sometime, but, well, Godspeed, mate.
And we knew going in like he was going to be the villain and he was military, so I guess just by default we kind of expected a somewhat over the top, you know, somewhat very you know, barking commands and this sort of thing, very loud, strong, and probably 9 out of the 10 actors who came in did it that way. And we were just kind of looking at each other like, yeah, you know, it's all kind of working, but nothing's really making my head spin. And then this one guy walked in and he did the role completely 180 degrees from everybody else. He did it very quiet, very withdrawn, but it almost sounded like a seething rage hiding just underneath. And to be honest, we were almost intimidated by the actor in the booth because he would literally just walk in, he wouldn't even say hi to anybody, and he would just look at the window and he'd be like, "Are we ready?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, we're ready. We're very sorry." So he was a great actor. He really brought the role to life because prior to that, we were sort of like, yeah, I guess it'll just be like your sort of generic, over-the-top military guy, but I thought he really brought something unique to that role. We were really happy with his casting.
Yeah, and because he brought something unique, we really, really wanted to kind of focus on him. But here's where we ran into dilemmas, because we wanted to have him reacting, Burke. We wanted Burke to be very present in the game, unlike some of our other villains, and we wanted him to really kind of be there. You'd have to know him, you'd have to see him, and we knew you didn't have a lot of screen time with him. So we'd kind of planned this whole thing where you're locked inside the safe for yet another time, and we would have, you know, him holographically appear in front of you as
Lad, you there?
Quinn? Where are you?
Getting me arse out of Dodge. Burke's had enough, and he's gunning for you. And I don't intend on being caught in the bloody crossfire. But listen, that trick you pulled with the gas, fucking brilliant work that was. Head to me shop. I left you a thing or two so you can give him hell. I'd like to say we'd meet again over a pint sometime, but, well, Godspeed, mate.
Over there! Trouble. Stop! Got him in sight.
You there?
Quinn? Where are you?
Getting me arse out of Dodge. Burke's had enough, and he's gunning for you. And I don't intend on being caught in the bloody crossfire. But listen, that trick you pulled with the gas, fucking brilliant work that was. Head to me shop. I left you a thing or two so you can give him hell. I'd like to say we'd meet again over a pint sometime, but, well, Godspeed, mate.
Search everywhere.
Nothing you've done here will make a difference. You know, Jensen. You know how human nature is. If I'd have known you were going to cause me so much trouble, I would have never given in to my curiosity about you.
Sarge, we got intel from Advance 2. He's been through. He got through. No word on casualties. Sweet Jesus. Those turrets should have been able to stop. Get out in the air! I need cover! Need a line of sight!
Still there, Jensen? You know, it didn't take much digging to figure out who you are. We have a surprisingly extensive file on you.
Those turrets should have been able to stop. Do we know who this guy is yet? What kind of psycho tries to take out a whole military base? It doesn't matter who he is or what he is. He doesn't get past this point. Take your positions and shoot on sight.
Yeah, you made it. I'm torn between admiration and pity. You've condemned me for my actions, Jensen. But look at the lengths you've gone to find one woman. Wasted potential. Although from what I've heard, I suspect you'll still be of use to me dead. Your altruism blinded you. You could have been an asset to the project. I could have used it. You're an aggressive fear, Jensen. It's a shame you're so undisciplined and idealistic. Your head's strong. It may have served you well in the past, but ultimately, it's a failure. Your altruism blinded you. You could have been an asset. I thought possibly to recruit you, but I see now you would never make a good soldier. So short-sighted, you disappoint me. How can a man so gifted be so blind?
It sounds like your struggles are almost over, Bratan. Is Burke dead?
I'm standing, he's not.
Good. With Burke out of the picture, here's a power vacuum I can take advantage of. Return to loading bay 2. The doors between here and the docking platform will be open for you.
Last time I passed through there, Burke's men were still waiting for me.
Not anymore. Burke has just ordered them away.
Great. Except I came here looking for Megan Reed, Bratan. I can't leave without knowing.
There is a boat heading toward the location as we speak. If you hurry, you can be on it.
Bratan.
Quinn?
I'm afraid our good friend Quinn met with an unfortunate incident during all the commotion and is no longer with us.
Your voice. It was you this whole time. Who are you?
For the moment, I'm between identities. I apologize for the duplicity, but it was a necessary precaution. You had to be kept in the dark.
And Keitner? Did she know?
Commander Keitner's perception was much like yours. Shrouded. She saw what she needed to see, and was told what she needed to hear in order for me to complete the mission.
So we were both pawns. Except she's dead and I'm not. So where does that leave me in your grand design?
We're all pawns in someone else's grand design, Mr. Jensen. But that doesn't make Natanya's death any less tragic. Your actions ensured her sacrifice was not made in vain, however. Dr. Kavanagh made it out safely, and is on her way to the rendezvous site. She will expose the truth in due time.
And the prisoners?
Ah, yes. The prisoners. With Kavanagh out, it's only a matter of time before this base makes international headlines. Until that time, however, I cannot say what Bell Tower will do next. I only know that a cornered and desperate bull is a very dangerous beast. We mustn't stay here much longer, Mr. Jensen, if we hope to get you away from this base.
All right. Where's Megan?
I don't know for certain. But what I do know is that earlier today, Burke issued orders to have a large group of detainees transferred off this base. Supposedly, they will be assisting at another black site facility.
Kavanagh said this was just the factory floor. You're sure Megan is at this other facility?
Nothing is ever certain in life, Mr. Jensen. But it is the best chance you have. Unfortunately, the cargo ship carrying the prisoners has already set sail. But I took the liberty to send out an urgent dispatch in Burke's name, ordering the ship's captain to hold position until one more detainee could be flown on board. In stasis. A helicopter is en route to pick you up.
Wait a second. You want me to get inside another stasis pod? Last time I got in one of those things, it didn't go so well.
I know it's far from ideal, but frankly, our options are quite limited. Although, I suppose you could try swimming there.
Better be the right fucking boat this time. Because I don't feel like coming back here anytime soon.
Don't worry, mate. It'll be grand. Besides, I thought you Americans liked riding off into the sunset.
Wrapping up the story of the missing link was challenging in and of itself, since we had to figure out a way. We got you off the boat, but now we had to get you back on the boat and back with your augmentations and weapons, and we didn't want to actually have you go into the boat and do it. So we had to come up with an ending that would get us onto it, that would wrap everything up nicely, and we had to do it with no cutscene budget. So we had to actually create an in-game cutscene.
It's one of the very rare in-game cutscenes we have in the project. It's how we should do the cutscene all the time, I think. It actually took us 3 weeks to act this in, because it's really hacking. We didn't have any tool to do these type of cutscenes, so we're pretty proud of what we had in the end.
It looks pretty impressive.
That's cool.